You stole Dad from me, and this is your punishment. In the midst of an argument, Campbell grabs my arm and forcibly takes me outside. Then, I'm shoved into a shed that's far from clean. I resist with all my might, but the younger strength is just too much. And so, I find myself locked in the shed. Inside the dark shed. It gets colder, and I start to feel ill. How? How can I get out of this shed? As panic sets in, I feel a slight weight in my back pocket. That's right, I have this. I quickly search my pocket. My name is Britt. 42 years old. I work as an office clerk at a company. The job isn't complicated, but it's never boring and feels rewarding, especially since my coworkers are all incredibly kind. It might be rare in the workforce, but I genuinely enjoy my work every day without feeling it's a burden. However, there was something that troubled me a bit. It was the fact that I wasn't married. Seeing my friends getting married and looking happy made me feel envious and sad at the same time. More than anything, I was very anxious about living the rest of my life alone. But there were no romantic prospects, and I wondered if any man would ever like me. I spent each day anxious, thinking about the future. However, a few years after I started feeling this way, I finally got married. His name is Lon. He's 7 years older than me and works for one of our clients. Lon became the new account manager for the company I worked for, and his visits became more frequent. At first, we were both reserved, but gradually, we became closer and started dating. After a few years of dating, Lon and I were able to get married. I was truly happy. I sincerely wanted to build a happy home. I truly believed that, from the bottom of my heart. Lon had a child named Campbell, who was 15 years old. Campbell was from Lon's previous marriage. I knew about Campbell's existence since we were dating, having met a few times. Campbell was very quiet and seemed to really like Lon. He always stayed close to Lon, never leaving his side. I found it endearing to watch Campbell, and hoped we could get along well living together, even though it was a vague thought. But I didn't yet know Campbell's true nature. After marrying Lon, I moved into the house where Lon and Campbell lived and started our life together. Having quit my job to become a housewife upon marriage, I did everything I could to make sure Lon and Campbell had a comfortable life. I prepared balanced meals, cleaned the house. It might seem ordinary, but I hoped it would make life easier for them. Having a family made household chores more challenging than when I was living alone. What soothed me during these times was a cat named Luna. Luna was a cat that already lived in Lon's house. She was far from skinny and had a habit of escaping, but I figured she wouldn't run away as much with me being at home all the time. Though it was often tiring, I found solace in loving and caring for Luna. Married life was hard, but I was many times happier than when I was single. That's what I thought, but there was one problem. It seemed like Campbell didn't think much of me and ignored me. Even when I tried to communicate, Campbell would look at me with a somewhat disdainful expression and ignore me. "Welcome home, Campbell." But Campbell barely glanced at my face and didn't respond. "How was school today? Did you have fun?" Even when I tried to continue the conversation, he still wouldn't say anything. After petting Luna for a bit, he went off to his room. I was being ignored, but I thought maybe Campbell just hadn't accepted me yet. Being 15 is a difficult age. If your dad remarries and suddenly a woman who isn't your real mom starts living in your house, it's natural to be wary. Campbell had met me a few times before Lon and I got married, but he just couldn't seem to get used to me. I was trying everything I could to get Campbell to accept me, experimenting with different approaches. But despite my efforts, Campbell never warmed up to me. Ignoring me became the norm whenever I spoke to him. He started to blatantly avoid me, and whenever he was with me, he always looked grumpy. He would talk a little when Lon was home, probably not to upset Lon, whom he adored. Still, I thought it was much better than not talking to me at all. For years had passed since I married Lon. The distance between Campbell and me hadn't closed, and our life remained somewhat unstable. Even after living together for 3 years, I didn't know what foods Campbell liked or what his hobbies were. The only thing I knew was that he adored Luna. I had become completely accustomed to Campbell's gaze, which I initially found intimidating. However, when Campbell became a high school student, he spoke to me out of the blue. "Hey, HM, what's up?" I was so surprised that Campbell was talking to me that my voice went up a bit. Was he finally opening up to me? What was he going to talk about? All sorts of emotions were swirling inside me, but I stayed silent, waiting for Campbell's words. But the words that came from Campbell were completely unexpected. "How long are you going to stay in this house?" "Excuse me? I mean, when are you leaving this house? Can you please leave soon? You're in the way." No, wait. Why would you say that? Being told to leave out of the blue was, of course, troubling. And why would he suddenly start saying such a thing? Many questions came to mind, but it was hard to articulate them. Then, from Campbell, I heard a reason that seemed to explain all of his behavior up to that point. "I love Dad so much, you know? We were finally living together, just the two of us. So why do I suddenly have to live with an old lady like you? Pretending to be my mom and everything. It's just unbearable." I thought if I treated you like you didn't exist, you'd break and leave us. How was school? Really? It's just creepy." And there were many more insults he hurled at me, each one leaving me speechless with their intensity. "With Dad, you act all sweet, but it's been really tough, you know? Maybe it's time you realized your own worth, old lady." Worth. Campbell, seeing me depressed, flashed a smile I'd never seen before and walked away. Had he always despised me this much? The barrage of insults and the command to think about my worth kept echoing in my mind. Before I knew it, tears were streaming down my face. What was the point of all my efforts over these 4 years? I tried so hard to be recognized by Campbell, but in the end, he never did. How should I interact with Campbell from now on? I racked my brain, but couldn't find an answer. From that day on, Campbell began to hurl insults at me. "Britt, I've always thought about it, but you're really bad at cooking. It's seriously awful." Really? I'm sorry. Poor Dad, falling for someone like you. There are so many better people out there. Dad could remarry in no time. But in front of Lon, Campbell would always play the good child. "Actually, Britt's cooking is delicious, right, Campbell?" "Yeah. It's tasty." I was always shocked by the change in attitude. "What's wrong?" "Britt is happy." I was happy, but not really. Such complex feelings, I doubted anyone could understand. "Indeed," I replied, maintaining my composure. Yet, Campbell continued to spew venom as if he'd lost all reason. The mental strain was immense, and I considered talking to Lon about it. But I couldn't bring myself to do it. Lon seems busy with work every day. Despite that, I just couldn't bring myself to confide in him about my troubles. I thought if I could just bear it all, everything would be okay. No matter how much I say I love Lon, I thought that someday I might leave this house and live on my own. It was just a matter of enduring until then. 5 years later, Campbell went to college after graduating from high school. Then, he got a job at a company near our home. Around the same time Campbell started working, Lon began to travel for work. Initially, these trips lasted only about 2 days, but gradually, they became longer, with 2-week and even 1-month trips becoming common. A few months after Lon started going on business trips, Campbell's verbal abuse did not subside. Taking advantage of Lon's absence, Campbell seemed uncontrollable. The food is awful. Can't you do something about it? Come on, say something. Campbell left the unfinished meal on the table and hurried off to Luna. I looked at the leftover food and quietly put down the fork. I had been enduring up to this point. But one day, I reached my limit. The constant verbal abuse, the cold attitude. Being treated more like a maid than a mother. There was no specific trigger. During one of Campbell's usual tirades, I just snapped. Seriously, just leave already. You're an eyesore. You know what? Listening to you, it sounds like you find me annoying and want me out of the house. Can you not? Campbell, taken aback by my usually quiet self talking back. But then, Campbell quickly retorted with vile words. What? Why are you suddenly talking back? I really can't stand that. I can't take it anymore. If you can't stand it, why don't you leave? You work, you have money, and you wouldn't struggle to live on your own. It's impossible for me as a housewife. It seemed Campbell was at a loss for words, having been hit with the truth. Without a word, Campbell was visibly fuming. It was clear how angry he was. So, you got nothing to say now. Where's all that energy gone? Just as I was about to press on. Suddenly, Campbell grabbed my arm painfully. Ouch! I cried out in pain, but Campbell was not listening. With a strong grip, I was dragged outside. Hey! Campbell pulled me toward a small shed outside and stopped. Then, forcefully shoved me into the shed. I resisted, but couldn't overcome the younger strength. I was quickly locked inside the shed. What are you doing? Hey! Let me out! I desperately banged on the walls, calling out to Campbell to let me out of the shed. But Campbell wasn't listening. Even if you tell me to let you out, that's impossible. Oh, by the way, I didn't tell Britt, but I have a trip planned. It's for 2 nights and 3 days. Well, try to survive in that cramped shed. 2 nights and 3 days! What about? Wait, what about Luna? Luna? There's an automatic feeder, she'll be fine. I was dumbfounded by such a careless statement. That's so irresponsible. Shut up! Don't ever come out of there again! After yelling, Campbell sneered and said, This is your punishment for stealing Dad from me. Punishment. Then, the presence of Campbell disappeared. Inside the dark, far from clean shed, I felt the chilly air and started to feel sick. What am I going to do? I can't stand being in here for 3 days. I was panicking even more, frantically pounding on the wall. But it was no use. That's when I felt something heavy in my pocket. Right. I have that. I quickly searched my pocket and pulled out my mobile phone. It was purely coincidental. I called my friend Elena, who lives nearby. Hello? Elena? Britt? What's up? It's rare for you to call. Well, I explained the situation and asked Elena to come and help me. It wasn't long before Elena arrived. Are you okay? The door was opened, and Elena appeared, along with the dazzling sunlight. Though I had only been in the shed for a few hours, it felt like I had been outside for the first time in days. I thanked Elena, and she took me to her house. I didn't have my keys, and Lon was away on a business trip. Elena said it was okay for me to stay at her house for as long as I needed. When I came out of the shed, I felt like Campbell was already gone on his trip. Now, the thing I needed to do next was to contact Lon, of course. I sent a message to Lon about what had happened, where I was now. I couldn't ask him to come back, but I sent the message with some hope. While talking with Elena, a few minutes passed. Then Lon called. Hello? Britt? Are you okay? Lon. I'm fine, thank you. Look, I'm coming back home. I'll pick you up from your friend's house, so just wait a little longer there. What about your work? Work doesn't matter. Anyway, I'm coming back soon. It'll take about 3 hours, so wait for me. Lon was worried about me and was coming back just for me. I thanked Lon and hung up. He's coming to pick me up. So, can I stay here for about 3 more hours? Of course. And really, you have such a good husband. I can see why Campbell might be jealous, kinda. Jealous? Jealous. Jealous. He was all Dad's the best, right? He's totally jealous of you for marrying his beloved dad. I see. Indeed, if you put it that way, it was jealousy. But, HM? Just because we're family doesn't mean we should hold back. Okay, I understand. Elena was right. Just because we've lived together for so long, acting out in anger like this isn't good for Campbell either. But how can I make him understand? I desperately came up with a plan. It was a bit forceful, but I thought of a certain strategy. I immediately shared it with Elena. You've come up with an interesting strategy. Go for it. I'll try my best. Elena was amused and agreed. 3 hours later, the doorbell rang, and Lon arrived at Elena's house. Are you okay? Britt. I'm fine, thank you. Sorry for bothering you during work. Work doesn't matter, you are more important. Moreover, Lon had decided to take a few days off work. Is it okay to take time off work? Yeah, they'll manage somehow. I think I need to have a serious talk with Campbell. Later, I thoroughly explained to Lon everything that Campbell had done up to now, and how I ended up being locked in the shed this time. Lon listened seriously and apologized. I'm sorry for not noticing. No, it's also my fault for not saying anything, and Campbell did it behind our backs anyway. Still, I should have noticed something. I'm really sorry. The mood was somber. Elena broke the silence. Hey. Why so gloomy? We're going to scold Campbell, right? Cheer up. Elena's words somehow encouraged us. Right, we should. Afterward, we thanked Elena and went home. I thought I had troubled Lon, but if this incident could calm Campbell down, I'd be happy. Once we settled down at home, I shared with Lon the plan to confront Campbell and why we had to go to such lengths. After thinking it over, Lon said, Well, indeed. Considering everything Campbell has done up to now, he probably won't understand without this. 3 days later, the day Campbell was due to return arrived. Not knowing when he'd be back, we left the window nearest to the shed open, watching for his return. Around 6 p.m., a taxi stopped in front of the house, and Campbell got out with his carry-on bag. The strategy one implemented involved trashing the inside of the shed I was supposed to be locked in and letting it emit a rotten smell. Honestly, it's debatable whether a person could die in such conditions within 3 days. Moreover, even if death occurred, a rotten smell wouldn't start permeating that quickly. However, I bet Campbell didn't know that. I wanted to give him a bit of a scare. With that in mind, I carried out the plan. Watching Campbell from a distance, I noticed he stopped in front of the shed. It seemed my plan was working. Yuck! What's this smell? Campbell made a puzzled face at the stench coming from the shed. After thinking a bit, he had a realization. No way! He said, and forcefully opened the shed door. Cough! Choking on the foul smell, Campbell was taken aback, but quickly changed his expression as he looked inside the shed in shock. What is this? It's all trashed. We approached the bewildered Campbell and spoke to him. Did you enjoy your trip? Britt. Why? Dad too. Campbell, we need to talk, Lon said, with a seriousness I'd never seen before. Seeing Lon's expression, Campbell seemed to understand everything. Campbell sat down on the couch, looking down. You did some pretty awful things to Britt, huh? Campbell didn't respond to Lon's words. You were panicking earlier because you thought Britt might have died in there, didn't you? That's not it. What? Then why was he panicking in front of the shed? Waiting for Campbell's words, he said something unexpected. I thought Luna might be inside. What? Luna? Because Luna used to escape a lot, and I thought maybe she had gotten into the shed somehow and couldn't get out. Normally, you'd be worried about Britt after you locked her up. What if I hadn't come back? I forgot about Britt. I couldn't believe he forgot he had locked me in there. Too shocked to speak. Lon was furious at such irresponsible remarks. I never thought you were that kind of person. I'm so disappointed. Wait, but... Campbell tried to make excuses. But Lon, sensing this, cut him off. But what? You're going to make excuses? Because I felt like you took Dad from me. So you took actions that could have been irreversible just because you felt that way? And you forgot about it. I never thought you would turn out like this. Lon said this and sighed deeply. It seemed like he had completely given up on Campbell. Feeling this, Campbell stood up and began to make excuses again. Dad, don't say that. I just love you. If you had just waited quietly for 3 days, I would have let you out. Besides, if Britt hadn't called her friend, it wouldn't have turned into such a big deal. Dad didn't have to leave work early or take days off. It's all your fault. Maybe if you hadn't been so obviously hateful, none of this would have happened. Maybe your misdeeds wouldn't have been exposed if you hadn't locked me up. You're the one who acted, yet you're trying to shift all the blame to me. What? And about Luna? You were worried, but you said it would be okay to leave her alone for 3 days, right? That's not normal. Do you even realize you're taking care of a living creature? I thought it would be okay. If you really cared, you wouldn't leave her alone for 3 days. And do you even know what Luna eats? Lon and I have been taking care of her. I thought you liked Luna since we started living together. But now, it seems you only pet her when you feel like it and ignore her otherwise. Your contradictions are starting to be amusing. Saying what I had been thinking, Campbell turned red with anger. Why should I be scolded by you? You're a stranger. A stranger. You're the one who stole Dad from me, so everything is your fault. Enough! Campbell, unable to grasp my perspective, fired back even more. However, Lon intervened. You've been nothing but selfish. How is everything Britt's fault? I can't comprehend what's going through your head. Dad. Campbell, tears welling up, turned to Lon. Yet, Lon's gaze was icy. I want you to leave this house. What? Why? Wait. That's too sudden. I cannot allow someone who endangers another's life on a whim, forgets about it, and then goes off to have fun, to stay in this house. Get out now. But... Quiet! Do you think you have the right to argue? You're completely self-centered. Campbell tried to persuade Lon, but was met with firm rejection. Eventually, Campbell looked to me for support. Hey. Britt, say something. No, it's impossible. Just leave as Lon has said. Can you stop turning to me because Lon is angry? It's clear you only think about yourself, just like Lon said. Upon hearing my words, Campbell's shoulders slumped in defeat. He then dragged his carry-on and left the house. Though his departure looked lonely, I felt no pity for him. Following this, Campbell bombarded me with messages and calls, claiming I'm sorry and I've reflected on my actions. Looking at the number and timing of those emails and calls, sent all at once or regardless of day or night, it was clear that he was being selfish, as always. Campbell also shared updates about his current living situation and daily life. It turned out he was working while staying in a budget motel. While I thought he could simply stay in a hotel or rent an apartment, he seemed too particular, wanting amenities like a concierge service and a clean room. Struggling to find suitable accommodation, he found nice places but couldn't afford the rent. Lon received identical emails and was astounded by Campbell's lack of practical life skills and overwhelming selfishness. But frankly, no matter what circumstances arise, there's no chance we would allow Campbell back into our home. I wish he would take this time to genuinely reflect on his actions. With Campbell gone, we reclaimed our peaceful life. Though Lon still travels for work, those trips have become significantly less frequent, giving us more time to enjoy each other's company in a relaxed atmosphere. It's much better now, without the constant tension, allowing us to truly unwind. Despite all the warnings, Campbell never listened, leading to this outcome, which I believe was for the best. Now, every day with Lon is filled with indescribable happiness. After finishing the housework, lounging on the sofa, Luna climbs onto my lap. She meows softly, curls up, and drifts off to sleep. I dream of continuing to live such happy, tranquil moments. While stroking Luna, I find myself lost in these gentle thoughts.